Check, check, Trump's a dog. Check, check.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Can I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to do a roll call for that one. Board Member Carrillo?
Go on. Well, you don't have to. We can.
Yes, I do, I have to have a roll call for that one.
Sure, yes.
Secretary Noble?
Yes.
Vice President Cashman?
Yes.
And the President votes yes. Any, no, I'm just going to say, so we have approval of the agenda, that's okay. I already told her. Okay. For the record, Board Member Trio is not here at this time. Let's have the introduction of the interpreter, please.
Good evening, Superintendent, board members, audience. My name is Alma Bejar. I will be doing the translation services in Spanish. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Alma Bejar. Si necesita mi ayuda en traducción en español, le puedo ayudar. Gracias.
Are there any board announcements? Let's start with Board Member Carrillo.
Yes, just that, well, first and foremost, a week from Friday, Friday Night Lights begins. Okay, everybody? High school football all around the nation. Every stadium's lit up all throughout the country with Friday night football. For us, it's going to be the rivalry of Santa Fe and St. Mike's. At Avid Stadium, we always open the season against St. Mike's. So I would just really encourage people to come out, because there's nothing like the roar of the crowd and the band and cheer and watching our boys just give it everything they have. And I believe that this year we could take St. Mike's in our season opener because of all the changes that have happened with both schools. So that should be super cool. Also, I had the opportunity today to attend Jumpstart at both high schools, the freshman Jumpstart. And I've got to say that the leadership at both schools, the traditions in Jumpstart, and the organization, it's very inspiring to be on those campuses and to, at the beginning of the new year, when all the freshmen are just, they're tall this year, they're really tall. But they're excited about school, and the teachers and everyone's excited. And, it doesn't matter what people say about education in America or Santa Fe. All you got to do is be on our campuses to see the progress our schools are making, the joy that there is on our campuses, and just the successes that we have. So hats off to the leadership teams and staffs of both our comprehensive high schools.
You sure they're tall, or are you shrinking? Secretary Noble? Okay, let's move on to Superintendent Announcements.
Yes, thanks.
I do have an announcement I want to make, and I think it's timely, and I hope that principals are listening and teachers are listening. I would strongly suggest that you go onto the Southern Poverty Law Center's webpage. They have great curriculum, and they have great curriculum to help you with your students over the issues that we have been dealing with as a country this past week. And they also have free materials and their magazine, Teaching Tolerance, which comes out to teachers for free, and you can have it mailed to your box. plus their website is a very good one, and it's one of the few organizations that I have donated to for decades. So I can tell you how much I appreciate the work that they do, and especially what they do for teachers. So that's my announcement. Let's move on to superintendent announcements.
Thank you, Madam President. We have two recognitions today, and I may go out of order so that you won't have to go up and back from the dais. So we'd first like to recognize Joni Brennison and Christ Church, and I believe she is here, in support and for their initiatives of the backpack drive, the clothes donation at Sweeney and Pinon, the prom dress donation, which really makes a difference for so many children, a tremendous amount of volunteer support, as well as the Summer Lunchbox Express, where they, feed children in the community. And I had a hard time getting Joni here because she'd rather hide in the background and not be front and center, but we want to thank her and thank their organization. So if you want to join me in going downstairs.
We have something for her.
Yes, I'm going to pull up this.
Oh, Linda is here. Lori, Linda's here.
Well, I didn't know I was going to have to say something, but what I will tell you, from the Lunchbox Express this summer, we fed over 5,000 children. So that was way cool. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Next, if we could have Trina Raper come on down. Ms. Raper is retiring, and we are very sad to see her leave, and we couldn't let her leave without recognition. Prior to joining the Santa Fe Public Schools, she worked at the Albuquerque Public Schools. Can you wait for me to take the picture? For 9 years. Trina Raper's first day with the Santa Fe Public Schools, I don't know if you remember the day, Trina, was December 11th, 1989. And she has worked with us as a teacher, that she stayed home raising kids for a little bit, and then a special education teacher, program support specialist, RTI coordinator, RTI and summer school coordinator, and executive director of curriculum and instruction. And you can go over a resume, but you really can't capture heart and spirit and enthusiasm and love of this district and the children and everyone in it in our community. And so I reminded Trina of 3 letters, RTW, return to work, which you are eligible to do in 1 year. And so we hope that she will greatly consider that. So please help me thank Trina for her service.
Well, Superintendent Garcia and members of the board and Santa Fe Public, oh my gosh, there's a group over here. The Santa Fe Public Schools has given my family a home. You helped me raise my children as a single parent. You let me grow. Janice Devote called me on my stuff when I was messing up and made me a better teacher as a result, and has become a dear friend. And so this is bittersweet for me. Truly, truly love this town. And as you know, I think of this as my kids and my principals and my families. And so now I release those to all of you to take with good, loving care, and I know that you will. So thank you.
Superintendent Garcia, with your permission, we'd like to also pay tribute to Trina from her staff at BF Young, and we're going to miss her dearly. Thank you.
Last announcement has to do with, we just recently had our Leadership Institute. It was structured as a conference. We started off with a kickoff the night before at the home of Michael Lee, August 3rd and 4th, that we were involved in the conference, and 89% responded that they found the Leadership Institute extremely engaging or very engaging. 9% found that it was somewhat engaging, and 2% maybe didn't think it was so great. But that's one person, so I mean, it's not bad, can't please everybody. But a lot of positive responses, and Nusenda was a big supporter that made that possible. We're going to take the feedback to improve it for next year, but it was a professional conference for them, and one that I think they really deserved, and hopefully got us all off to a great start for the school year. I also want to thank everyone for the back-to-school rally who was able to participate. That was also a really great event, to see almost all of our employees there ready for the start of a brand-new school year. That's the best thing about being in education, is that every year we get a brand-new, fresh start. And that concludes my announcements.
Board Member Trujillo was not here during the board announcements, and she has an announcement.
Thank you, Board President. So this last week, Jeff and I had an opportunity to visit with about 15 to 20, 15-ish individuals that were visiting from Germany. And we met with them for an hour over at the Round House. Most of them were teachers, and they explained to us, you know, what grades they teach, what subjects they teach. There was one that was a professor. She talked a lot about how training for teachers happens, and it's much more intense in Germany. And then, Grace, you would love this. They have a 2-year mentoring program where the teachers don't even have to teach in a classroom. They're literally with a mentor teacher for almost 2 full years before they get a class of their own and become a teacher, and they're paired with master teachers. There was also 2 students. They were 15, and they were over here visiting, and they all had some great experiences. Many of them have been to the United States before, but those who had been here before said that New Mexico and the program that they were traveling with was the best program that they had ever participated in. And I believe we promoted the video that we watched, you know, promoting Santa Fe Public Schools as a place to come and work. And there was at least one teacher who was very interested and exchanged cards with Jeff. And, you know, maybe that will come to fruition, but we just had a great time. Jeff created some packages. I believe it was a t-shirt and maybe some mugs, some gifts for them to take home. And it was a great opportunity.
Thank you. Let's move on to public forum. Captain Grumman.
President Price, members of the board, superintendent, we have one speaker tonight, Lisa Randall, and I'll read first the public forum ground rules. Please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please don't discuss any specific student who is not your own. No sharing of time. Self-monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit. I'll give you a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue is allowed only during the public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it's on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. And lastly, please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on items that are not on the agenda. Lisa.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to share some energy and water conservation program updates with you, considering it's the start of a new year. I've been doing my annual recycling roadshow since August 7th, visiting 21 schools with recycling supplies and support, and we'll finish the rest tomorrow. About 15,000 step days. We currently have a 33% recycling diversion rate, which means 67% of our waste ends up in the landfill. Still too much, but we're getting a lot better. When this program started in 2010, we spent $250,000 a year throwing everything into the landfill. Today, we spend $190,000 a year on trash, food waste composting, and recycling combined. So we act more responsibly, and we save a lot of money doing so. I was able to do a program training session with secretarial, student nutrition, and custodial staff in the last 2 weeks. It's really essential that I get face time with employees who are largely responsible for much of the conservation program execution and give them a chance to ask questions and share feedback. Fiscal year 2017 was a busy one for the sustainability program. Because I believe that facts matter and data should always inform decisions, I track every gallon, kilowatt hour, and therm used at each individual site as well as costs associated. We are still spending less on utilities today than our benchmark year of 2010, even with rising utility rates and increasing building square footage. We continue to keep water use down by 38% from the benchmark year, using 21 million gallons less in 2017 than we did in 2010. Our natural gas use is down by 31% compared to 2010. Our electrical use is down by 9%. We use 22% less P&M electricity because of our solar generation. And we installed almost a megawatt of solar PV in 2017. We're currently 16% solar powered with 3 more solar arrays in design now. The Sustainable Building Design Guide was finished last week and is now available for contractor and architectural teams to guide them in building more sustainable facilities for SFPS. This should be on the SFPS green pages under departments on our website by the end of the week. We received a $10,000 P&M Centennial Grant to help fund our quest for a sustainability program specialist, a teaching curriculum version of me, if you will. My department of one can only do so much, and reaching our classroom students and staff is the real game changer in all of this work. Preparing our students for the jobs of today and tomorrow will need to be STEM and sustainability focused, because along with facts, I also believe science matters. I think we all can see that that need is even greater today more than ever. The first draft of the district sustainability plan should be available for staff and student review this fall. That too will be a game changer in terms of environmental stewardship. I'd like to leave us all with a thought, as I find it increasingly difficult to make sense of this world, as I imagine you do too. Whether it be the horrifying events such as Charlottesville, Virginia over the weekend, or the White House withdrawal from the Paris Accord and dismantling of the EPA, the list goes on. I think this fits. If we ever wondered what we would have done during the time of slavery, or the Holocaust, or the Civil Rights Movement, and I would add, to address catastrophic climate change, we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing right now? Because that's the answer. So let's all keep fighting the good fight. We need each other more than ever. Thanks.
Before you seat yourself, we
Yes,
know who
yes,
you
ma'am.
are, but you didn't.
Pardon me. Lisa Randall, Energy and Water Conservation Program Coordinator for the district.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the union update. And please tell us who you are.
Good evening. I'm Grace Mayer, the NEA Santa Fe president and art teacher at Milagro Middle School. NEA Santa Fe and the district have planned several joint trainings for our new employees. We had our first one on the 11th, and we discussed contractual rights and also how to work through the first year with your mentor. We had representatives from the district help coordinate that with Linda Sink and myself. We are hosting a similar orientation for new employees for our elementary school teachers on the 18th at NEA from 2 to 4, going over the same types of concerns that we felt new employees would be interested in understanding. I know they're talked at a lot, but we're hoping that the information that they are provided with will ease some of their concerns throughout the year. And we want them to encourage them to ask questions and find people to help them so that they maintain their employment with the district and that they become a very long, well, I'll take that back, Trina. We aspire to have them stay as long as someone like Trina has stayed in various capacities. We worked at Pinion together. I was an art teacher, and Trina was in kindergarten. Do you remember that? Flashback. Okay, so NEA Santa Fe also presented at the nutrition training, and we're grateful that we were allowed to do that, to talk to our employees that are represented by NEA, and we also talked to the transportation orientation, and that was a very pleasant conversation given the fact that they received raises, and they also are part of some enhancements that we hope will maintain their employment. Unfortunately, I heard from Randy that we are short bus drivers, and that's hard for us to hear because we're making every effort to try to get them to stay and maintain their employment. I also was on the way out the door on the national news. There was a whole thing on shortages of transportation employees, and they highlighted Denver, and contractors are finding it really hard to find people for various reasons. Part of that is that, you work 2 shifts and, like a morning shift and an afternoon shifts, and it's not compensated that well. But we know that our district does compensate our employees that work in transportation well, we believe. And we also have other benefits that enhance that employment that many other districts or the city does not. So I hope that if you're listening and you want to get your CDL and work for Santa Fe Public Schools, it's a good place to work. Let's see. So the beginning of the school year, as we all know, it's exciting, but it's also exasperating in a lot of different ways because some things don't always work out, like the air conditioning isn't working, your desks are piled in the middle of the room. Some of your colleagues decided to take that extra week on vacation, and so you're the lead teacher having to set up a classroom while someone's like still at the beach. But once the students arrive, I believe we'll all settle down and things will get back to normal, and the real work then begins. And I hope that for everyone returning to Santa Fe Public Schools, that they start the year on a positive note with their students and always fill each day with the joy of learning. And that they lead with their hearts and they embrace all the students that we have, and regardless of their backgrounds, and certainly given the climate of what we're seeing in the last few days, regardless of their race or gender identification or religion, I think we need to start embracing each other's differences more and talking publicly about them, even in our capacity as leaders in the classroom, because all of these behaviors that we're seeing, unfortunately, were learned. Children don't come hating other people, or, they embrace each other. And if you've ever worked with really young kids, I mean, they just see each other's light in each other. They don't see anything else. And so it's fascinating to me that as we grow older, we limit ourselves to responding to people out of difference instead of out of acceptance and togetherness or oneness. And that's my, a little too philosophical, but I'll get back to a few concerns that I'd just like to bring to the board's attention. One concern is that we did cut some staff, and I think our numbers for our teachers, even though they hit the maximums, they feel for some folks that they're going over their numbers in some classes, and some of them are, and they're projected, and we usually make adjustments within the first 10 days. However, some of our, especially our early childhood teachers who know that more students are coming, are a little anxious about waiting 2 weeks to have that teacher come in to make that transition again. For the first time, when students are coming to school for the first time, it's much more difficult to transition them from one adult to another, even if we think it's only 2 weeks, but for them it's, an eternity. And the first couple of days, they're with that person and make a connection. So if there's anything we can do to speed up that process of finding those additional teachers or creating that additional FTE even sooner than the 10 days, we'd like to work towards that. There were concerns at most of the schools that where we moved or merged, or about just some of the physical labor involved in some of that. And I have a lot of black and blues, and there's some limitations that some of our faculty have, and I think we did our best to sort of provide, or the district did, to provide movers and other things, but in those situations, I think we really need to consider starting school a little earlier for those schools, and so that those transitions are made a little smoother. We did have an opportunity at Milagro to meet as a community and try to, work together to create community moving forward. But I also think that we probably needed 2 or 3 more days just in our school, trying to figure out how to, physically move stuff around. And I'm sure Mandela, and I believe Zia, and maybe, I'm blocking the last one, but probably needed some more additional time. So moving forward, maybe we can work on that. Hopefully those transitions don't happen though. But the other good news is that the CBA is at the printers, and NEA Santa Fe would like to thank Lori Lehrman, who worked with us and assisted us in the editing process, which was extensive. I was pretty much in her office for maybe 2 weeks, I don't know, making sure that, and she also made sure that the printer had the updated edits and made all changes, and we met with the printers, and she did well past reasonable hours. So I want to thank you directly. Also, Dwayne Shields and Marty Einstein and Jonathan Leibowitz from NEA also worked to help edit and make sure that the CBA is accurate. And I just want to tell you that that's not an easy process. You really need 2 people reading from one document to another, adding the changes, and then the mix of having the printer sort of redo that stuff and edit makes it more complicated. So I think we had maybe 5 or 6 different drafts that 4 or 5 people had to spend days doing. So I know it doesn't seem like a big issue, but I want to make sure that Lori is recognized for that work. Okay, I think that's it. I welcome everybody back, and for our new employees, we're here to help, so if you need us, please contact us, and we wish for everyone to have a productive and joy-filled year. So, thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Now moving on to board update and follow-up. Is there any board update or follow-up? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think I see things and I don't. I'll have to switch glasses, I guess I can. Okay, my bad. Consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
A second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? With no opposition, it passes. All right. Is there any board update and follow-up? We never do seem to have board update and follow-up. Okay. Board member Trujillo.
I'm hoping this is the right place. Superintendent, we had talked, and I think Board Member Carrillo had brought it up about the student board members and what their responsibilities were going to be. And are you talking about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you.
It's coming.
I'll talk about
It's a
it
preview.
then. Can I add something then? Superintendent?
When you do yours.
It's up to the board president. Okay.
Oh, let me think about it. Yes, of course.
Thank you.
All right, superintendent's update and follow-up.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. First of all, last time we met, we introduced all the new staff, and we did go over the resumes of everybody, but Dr. Melissa Lomax was not in the audience, so I'd like to introduce her today, just to you so you have a visual of what she looks like and who she is. So Dr. Lomax is our new Executive Director for CNI and Professional Development. The next announcement has to do a follow-up with teacher vacancies and staffing plan for the first day of school. We have 12.2 FTE vacant. That's 14 positions because some are partial, like 0.2 or 0.4. It's 12.2 FTE with one pending offer. The positions are filled with long-term subs or internal staff assigned to classrooms. There is a teacher vacancy, I think, report in your folder. We will have a comprehensive presentation in September to include exit interviews. There was a question, I think it was Board Member Trujillo, on how we might be able to expedite for faster, easier, cheaper ways to obtain background checks for volunteers. My understanding was that Mr. Romero and Mr. Bernardino were going to give that quick update. Is that correct? Otherwise, I have the pieces highlighted here. I think that the information is in your. Do you have that in your packet? 8B, by any chance, like an Exhibit 8B? If not, our Director for Security will just give us a very quick update on that.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Superintendent, President, and board members, in regards to the question about reducing volunteers' background checks by fees or the comprehensiveness of the background check, our own policies 203 and 604 include volunteers to obtain and submit fingerprints to obtain FBI records. That in itself is a $44 expense that the FBI sets. And then there's an additional fee of $8 to obtain, $8 to obtain fingerprints from the Department of Public Safety. And that's just a fee that they charge to collect the fingerprints. So because our own policy, and actually the statute does allude to people that have unsupervised access to students are required to obtain FBI records. I'm not seeing that there's a way to do that without circumventing the the law and our own policy. So I did check with some other districts to see what they do, and some of them close to us do a reduced background check, and I think that's at their own risk. But there are others that do complete the full background check. I think as a security director for the schools that would be the most prudent approach.
And I think just one other point, we did look into doing it ourselves, and that comes with another set of problems. In terms of security of the machine, I mean, it has a bunch, a lot of safety requirements that really, I think, would be prohibitive for us to try to go in that line of work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lano Foundation Physics Curriculum, a meeting has been scheduled. And I think that was Board Member Trujillo for August the 28th at 10 a.m. And so we will be following up, and then also on that September 18th meeting. Regarding student board members, Ms. Christy Wagner and Mr. Gephardt are assigned the supervision of the student board member course. Principals are confirming and registering the student board members for independent study. Mr. Gephardt will serve as the teacher of record. Orientation and overview of the course syllabus will take place prior to their first meeting in September. Their first board meeting will be September the 5th. And as I understand it, and I'm looking over there to the team, I think both of our student board members are returning from last year, so they will be back. Jeff and Christy will be alternating, I think, working with them to prep them for the board meeting so that they can engage in they'll have a more limited board review so that they can more engage, and then they'll have a project, I think, that they'll have to complete. And so I believe, excuse me? I'm not sure exactly what their is it a presentation to the board? I don't know what their project is, or have you worked that out yet? Can one of you respond to that? Yeah.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, it is a presentation to the board, and there's some flexibility in the syllabus that we obtained that was used previously. We are modifying the syllabus a little bit, and then we'll have more details about what that presentation will look like. But the board members ultimately get to choose something that interests them, that is board related, to present to you.
Board Member Trujillo, and then Board Member Carrillo.
Thank you. So some of the ideas that I had was I'd like the board members to be active in the board meetings, and I'm wondering if we couldn't at least give them one opportunity, if not changing off opportunities when they're here, to run the meeting, maybe even through superintendent's updates and follow-up. So that they could learn that parliamentary procedure and I think it's more challenging to run a meeting than it is to sit and watch a meeting function. And I think it's a great opportunity for them to feel empowered to do that. So I'd love to see if we could move that, work that into it. And then the other thing.
Before you, can I?
Yes.
Is that legal?
So we're asking our general counsel, and I don't want to put you on the spot to answer. If you have an answer, you can go to the podium. Otherwise, we could research that. Ms. Sullivan, your preference?
I would prefer to research that and get back to you.
Thank you. So she'll research that and get back to us. I just want, since they're not elected officials, I just want to check.
Yeah.
I just want to check that.
No, I appreciate that, Board President. And so my idea is not that they would vote, because I don't think they have the authority to vote, but certainly they could, I believe that they could open the meeting, they could do the flag salute, the approval of the agenda. They could, I would like to see them have that opportunity. And then the other thing is that I'd like us as board members to have some responsibility too, even if it's just one thing that we do. It would be nice if we had the responsibility to come and speak with them once before the meeting starts, or that we meet with them at another time. I would just like to see that happen too. And if nobody else wants to, then I'm volunteering.
Now, it's in the past, what they have done is met during our executive session. Is that your plan?
So, Board President Price, we are going to do a pre-board meeting with them, similar to the board review, so that they can be more active during the meetings. And so that is something that we can work with Dr. Garcia on establishing your involvement in that. And when we do that, if you are interested in it, we'll work with Dr. Garcia and we'll nail down the protocol for that.
Yeah, I would love to see that happen and to have them bring forward, even if it's a resolution, that's of importance to them. Bring something forward that is not just a presentation at the end, but sometime during the year that they bring something forward that we're going to consider and make a decision about. So those are just my ideas.
Board Member Creel?
Within the syllabus, is there the requirement or on of them, because I'd like to know actually, what are they doing at their school sites? What are they doing after they leave a meeting? What are they doing in their student government or their student government class? What are they doing at their school sites relative to their interaction with the board? Be interesting to find out. I mean, do they have a student government meeting where, I know they do. So are they asking during that meeting, are there things you want me to bring to the board? Just so there's much more interaction between the two bodies, if you will. And the second thing is, and we've lucked out this way that they're juniors and then they stay for 2 years. I think that needs to be something that we kind of embed in the program so that when these two graduate, the next two that come in are juniors. So we're not so there's some, institutional knowledge of what's going on.
Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Moving on, Superintendent, presentations.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. First, we'd like to, our first presentation is Achieving a Successful School Opening, a dashboard update. Dr. Tom Ryan will kick off that presentation.
Madam President, Dr. Garcia, members of the board, this is an update on the dashboard that we provide for our schools. The first page is enrollment. You'll see a couple things that are different from the last time I presented. The numbers on the right side column have turned from red to mostly green. These are the number of students that are registered. The only ones that are remaining are elementaries. They need to wait till the kinders come in and get that scheduled. That has changed since this morning when this was published, so that should be set. Second, you can see that we're hitting about 98.3% of what we projected. That number will also change as no-shows are counted. Again, we have to wait 10 days to remove those no-shows from the records. Those could be kids that transferred to a private or charter or another school district, or kids that have for some reason decided not to come back to the district. You'll also see an increase in enrollment in perhaps some of the kinders. And the third main area, that number 12,631 does not represent kids that are still pending. Most of those are stuck because of immunizations, or they need to get certain documents so they can be fully enrolled in school. Once they're enrolled in our student information system, then they're given a schedule, etc. So those are the three big issues or differences on that page.
Question. So that means if they have their immunizations are not up to date, they are not enrolled?
They have not completed the enrollment process.
However, I do need to clarify, Madam President, members of the board, I think by law they do get to enroll, and then there's a period of time we notify them. I think it's almost like to December, I believe. Or Trina, do you remember? I think it's around December where we start sending them the letters, but there is a statutory period of time on the immunizations, and I do believe that it is right around that third month. We can't keep them from enrolling. They have a grace period to get it. And I think that's in statute.
Board Member Carrillo.
That's not how I recall it happening a couple of years ago.
That's right.
I mean, I recall that when we led the state in making this an issue, right? We gave them I mean, yes, they can enroll, but the point at which it was like a week. You don't bring us immunization. Well, we did it and it worked, and they did it around the state. So I would have us look into that, because it's like, we're not going to let kids that don't have their records and their, especially vaccinations, hang around for 6 months and get everyone sick.
I
Once one of them
agree.
goes to Disneyland and picks up the mumps,
I
or
agree,
whatever
but
it
we
was.
do have to follow the law.
No, I know we have to follow the law, but,
So we'll check.
so I wouldn't say
because
we
did
broke
check.
the law.
We checked last year, and that was what we found. And Ms. Raper, you want to comment on that? We did research this, because I know this is real important to all of us, that we're healthy and safe.
Right. Dr. Garcia, Superintendent and President, members of the board. I can't quote you statute, but what I can say is that we did have a nurse and 2 nurses assistants working at immunizations over the summer. So we did call, and we had like over 1,000 students that we contacted to make sure that their immunizations were up to order. So this number will roll over fairly quickly as those families get in to see their physicians and get the immunization records up to date. So we've done that in the last 2 years as part of our K3+ program. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve on that. Some of those also will be pre-K students. So what happens with pre-K is you can't get immunized until you're 4. So if you don't turn 4 until August 20th, then what you have is, what we ask you to come in is with your appointment card that says you're going to go get your immunization, but we can't keep you out of school, but we know that you're going to get it. Now, if you never get it, then we've got this period of time then that we have to say, okay, you can't come to school. So classes start on the 16th, you turn 4 on the 20th, you can come to school if you're 4 on August 31st. There's that weird window. So some of that will reflect on a very few 4-year-olds, but we've been active all summer trying to help families get the notices and call them and take a proactive approach.
And we updated you last year, as I recall, on this, and it was later in the year. I know the numbers dwindled down, but I know that we did not have them out in 2 weeks. So, we'll research it, I promise
Right.
you, and we'll bring you back the information.
Thanks. And 2 other things. El Camino Real, 842 kids. And projection is 852. We never, ever, ever intended to have a school that large in the district. When we passed the small school resolution, it was around 4 to 450 for K6, and then if there was a situation where you were having a K8, I think maybe it was, 130 for each grade or whatever it was. I could go back and look. But we never, ever intended to have, and looking at Nina at 729, schools that large. So I just think that we ought to, not next week, not even next month or in 3 months, because I know how incredibly busy you all are, but look at zoning changes that may need to happen, like maybe when Turquoise Trail comes online, or something to reduce the size of that school, and especially given the development that's going on. And I think it's going to be like this almost hidden explosion that's going to confront us in a really bad, expensive way.
On that point, Madam Chair, we also have an issue that we've been working on at Amy Beal, and that community is also building out in a way that is impacting enrollment, and we have a strategy, but we are working with our Chief Operations Officer, and we're going to have to comprehensively look at boundaries again, and we'll take a comprehensive approach and bring that back to you this school year.
All right. Obviously, there's not a hurry because you all are so busy. Okay, thanks.
The
Vice
next,
President Cashman?
So when we look at that comprehensive approach for zoning, and I think we've talked about it, but would we also consider figuring that out before we start doing any more interzone transfers until we have a comprehensive approach? Because, as we talked, Amy Beal is caught in that bind, and we need to first figure out what those zones are and what the capacity is at each school before we start accepting interzone transfers in the
And are
future.
you saying interzone transfers for 2018-19? Yeah.
Board Member Creel?
Do you have just a rough amount and how many at El Camino are transfers in? Just curious, like just a big, or just a rough.
While there, 2 minutes, we'll continue with the presentation, and
Two
we'll
will
get you
work.
that answer. No, 2 minutes, he needs
Yeah.
2 minutes.
No,
So-
I know it. That's
So
what I
we'll
heard.
continue, and then
All right. Thanks,
we'll
Chris.
go to the podium, Chris, when you have it, okay?
Chris, can you type that fast?
All right, going to the dashboard, you'll notice that we'll get an update on the staffing. This is again of this morning. There's been work that's been done throughout the school day to get the people that we need into the schools for the classrooms. On the principals and department list, you're going to see a lot of the red is starting to disappear. We've also removed the, almost all of the blank columns by personal phone calls. Ms. Lamon has done an excellent job in calling up schools, and she's got great contacts in the school to make sure that we can get these numbers in so that we're providing as much support as possible. And that goes on to the next sheet, whoops, that has facilities, IT readiness, and safety security type issues. So significant movement. Most of the yellow is due to sites that are under construction. As soon as those construction activities are done, then we'll be able to move in computers, et cetera, that would flesh that out. And with that, I've exhausted my time. Chris, have I? Oh, he's on the minute 2 of the 2-minute.
Vice President Cashman?
So just for us and for the public that may not be looking at these slides, Superintendent, are we ready for opening schools tomorrow? We should have a smooth and seamless welcome back for our
As
students.
smooth as can be expected. I mean, there will always be some bumps, with 15,000 kids or 14,000 some kids in 30 schools. I mean, there will be some bumps in the road, but I think that we've done our best. We're providing some additional support to our new middle school, Milagro. Linda, before she left, our deputy superintendent, Christy, all of the chiefs have staff assigned throughout the district, so every school will have some sort of district personnel. I believe I'll be visiting, 6 to 7 schools tomorrow. And we have teams in place, people to support. And I think we're in pretty good shape, but I wouldn't tell you, yes, it's going to be smooth sailing and everybody's going to be happy. But we've been working hard to provide good customer service, to triage. And one of the things that I'm really proud of our team is that there isn't anyone that will say this isn't my job or it isn't my department. I'm very proud of the collaborative effort of everyone trying to help regardless of their role. And I take my hats off to the team.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, to the 2-minute call for, it's 12% or 99 kids.
Okay. Then I would just, obviously in the upcoming years, except for maybe SIBs or something, shut off transfers to that school.
Yeah, I am curious, why the decision is made to go over a certain number. I really don't know. I think it's something, that we just need to look at our processes because, we really need to look at that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next presentation, please.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Ms. Sink is not here. And to introduce Ms. Raper, and is Ms. Massey going to help her? Dr. Lujan, are you going to introduce it? Okay, I'm sorry.
Good evening, Board President Price, Dr. Garcia, Superintendent, and board members. So I'm here to introduce Trina Raper as our Executive Director of Curriculum and Professional Development, and Mary Massey, as we know her as well, as our Coordinator for Extended Learning Programs. Both ladies have monitored and have contributed their expertise to ensure that summer programs are quality programs and that we move forward and that we don't lose a beat or a step with our kids with extended learning. So they will be presenting you with an update of every one of our summer school programs, also in addition to the number of students who participated, and also some highlights. Ladies?
How do I get out of this? Next. Right? Close?
No, see over here. Exit.
Just exit here?
Yeah.
Okay. And then over here. Slide news here. Everybody's got a way to do this. I can't see it. Ooh, that's cool. Okay. Superintendent Garcia, President Price, members of the board, thank you for letting us come to you again with our summary for summer school programs that we had. As we go through this, you'll see that we were busy this year. Okay, now what do I do next? Okay, right?
You just hit enter and it'll.
Okay. All right, so we're going to be talking about the program goals, the overarching goals. We have two strands of programming. We have academic programs and enrichment programs. We're explaining our summer school, both the academic and the enrichment programs, and then giving you an idea of what's happened since 2013 as far as our attendance goes. Okay, why am I not doing this right? Okay. All right. Click the arrows. Okay. All right. So as you can see that our priority goals are to keep our students exploring, discovering, and growing over the summer so that we don't get the known as the summer slide. Every child has the opportunity to participate in high-quality summer programs that increase learning and offer innovative enrichment activities. Where is the arrow? Okay. Ooh. All right. The enrichment programs that we have, Hands-on Heritage, their goal to discover and explore New Mexico history, culture, and arts. That happened in two schools this year. Scrub Club moved from Capitol High over to El Camino Real because of the construction. Again, a well-known program that you know is run by Stephanie Godele-Leba with their hands-on science activities for middle school students. Innovation Camp came back this summer at the high school again for middle school students with STEM activities. The 21st Century program extended into from our aftercare programs during the school year and provided summer programs with STEAM-based and wellness and reading activities for 3rd through 5th graders. And then the Music and Art Camp had an increase in attendance this year and provided instruction in visual arts, band, guitar, orchestra for 4th through 12th graders. And then, of course, ESY, the extended school year, was meeting the individual educational program plan needs for our special education, our students with special needs.
Okay. Superintendent Garcia, President Price, and members of the board, we are very, very proud of our teachers for providing high-quality summer enrichment and academic programs for our students. And just some of the highlights that we would like to point out. We had a lot of students traveling for field studies over the summer. The Hands-on Heritage program actually had 11 different field studies that they went on, and that included to Las Golondrinas and the Farmers Market. The Native American Enrichment Program, you can see the type of activities that they got to participate in, including Bandolier and the Santa Fe Pueblo Opera Program. For 21st Century, near and dear to my heart, it's really kind of tough to go on field studies after school when you just have that window of a couple of hours after school. So our 21st Century programs really took advantage of having the full day. So they scheduled their field studies to the Botanical Garden, the wetlands, and the Museum of International Folk Art. Other enrichment highlights included the Music and Arts Summer Camp, and they had a couple of stellar performances. They showcased both elementary and secondary students in band, orchestra, guitar, and visual arts, and our student enrollment doubled over last summer. As Trina mentioned, at our high schools, the 2 summer camps that are tied to the academies at the high school sponsored these camps. Capitol's Medical Academy sponsored the Scrub Club, and they had a lot of hands-on activities. I went over there, and they were conducting dissections that day.
Excuse me for a second here.
Yes, ma'am?
Would you explain dissections, please? Because my understanding is that we can't do dissections.
I'm not sure.
Were these live animals?
No, no.
Were these computer dissections?
No, they weren't computer.
Were they real?
I'll have to research that and get back with you. I think that they were the same type of dissections they do during their regular medical academy.
I just want to follow up on that.
Because we had a big brouhaha a number of years ago.
We did.
Do you have a board policy that's against?
I thought we did.
I'll follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, we'd be happy to follow up.
Yeah, a number of years ago, there was this was a big issue between the 2 high schools.
Okay. All right, we'd be happy to follow up. And then, of course, I'm sorry?
I'm just curious.
Board Member Carrillo?
Yes, I'm sorry. What was the issue? I'm just curious because I was probably before my time.
There are serious concerns. I'm not speaking one way or the other.
Right, I'm just curious.
There are serious concerns about using animals. Now, I don't know what you did, but we used frogs.
We used frogs and
pigs. And we used fetal pigs, and we used those things. And there was I thought we did well, I wasn't on the board at the time. I was a teacher at the time, but there was a big brouhaha between the 2 high schools about it. And I thought that was decided that we weren't going to do dissections anymore. So that's why I'm asking, because you can do very good dissections on the computers now. We didn't have computers back then.
But then, like when I was in high school, you can't hang the computer from the rafters in the freshman locker room.
Or put it in people, or put parts in people's lab coats.
For the pigs. Yeah.
When I was in medical school, there were parts put into lab coats.
Yes.
Thank you. We drift sometimes.
That's all right.
So does snow.
We will. President Price, members of the board, and Dr. Garcia. Then the Innovation Camp was part of the Innovate Academy, and there was a wide range of project-based STEM activities that were included in that week-long summer camp. You're up.
Yeah, Board President Price, members of the board, and Dr. Garcia, these next few slides are simply the slides that you have seen before, giving you an overarching picture just to give you an idea of the number of programs, the dates, and the schools that we've been at. I don't think you need me to read those, but we do understand that K3+ Title I and elementary and Title I middle school and the high school programs on this slide were the academic programs. The enrichment programs, again, where they were located, and the programs that we just reviewed for you, and the dates that we had those. Again, more of the enrichment programs. We've also added, new this year was the Avid language program, which was basically an English immersion program that has come to us through Avid. Reading is Magic. It takes Santa Fe Public School students for free and has it at their campus at the School for Arts and Sciences. And then we included the City of Santa Fe recreation program because they were in 5 of our buildings this year. And then here is our participation, right?
Board Member Carrillo, did you have your hand up? Vice President Cashman?
So under our participation level, how many students were we not able to accommodate that wanted to because of funding issues? Do we know?
What we know, we've got a later presentation for you about K3+, and we'll have that information then.
Thank you.
Right. If you look here at the totals, though, at the bottom, we did fairly well given that we had some budgetary cuts, and we increased some programs, and we're still making a concerted effort to make sure that the Santa Fe children have programming to attend during the summer. Okay, I stand for questions. We stand for questions?
Board Member Carrillo?
They're not questions, just two observations. The first is high school summer school. How many do we have graduating this summer?
Oh, my
75.
Oh, I don't remember. I
It was
had the number.
huge.
It was large.
I think it was 75.
It was huge. They were standing and sitting all the way back to the doors to that parking lot. It was amazing, just great success. And so just for both of our comprehensive high schools, and just hats off to them for really the leadership they provided to getting their kids over the finish line. Because it was really something this year to see that many kids graduating for summer, and especially Engage, had 15, I think, total, 13 or 15 total. Those are kids that would have never, ever graduated high school had this district not determined that their lives and futures were of value.
And I was told 52 we had graduated.
Wow.
52.
That's fantastic. And then I just wanted to do a shout out to Stephanie Gurule-Leba. When you look at the growth of that program in the last several years, and when, the people out watching, sometimes you don't have a chance to go to the Capitol High School graduation or banquet, senior banquet, when you see how many kids are going on a medical school. And where this was all sparked because, and some of the people in Scrub are, middle schoolers and little, and you're just getting their brains going, and they get so excited about the medical fields. And so
You
there's
don't
just
go from
such-
high school to medical
What?
school.
What? Oh, not directly, but they're going that path. And there have been a couple from Capitol High School that when they graduated, they had full rides, both for their undergrad and for their medical school. First time graduating high school, and it's because of Scrub and the program at CHS. So another great Santa Fe Public Schools success that often doesn't, get the attention that it deserves. I don't know anybody else that's doing Scrub Club around the state, do you? Right. There you go. Hats off SFPS. The other thing I want to do a shout out is to you, Miss Massey, because I don't know that the board, because there were transitions that were happening, was ever able to properly thank you for your commitment to the 21st Century Sustainability Program when it started at Santa Fe High School, and then how that morphed into ECO. And because programs like ECO and the 21st Century, the sustainability, they don't happen without innovation, vision, and leadership. So I think that we as a board thank you for all the work you did to get that going.
Board Member Carrillo, members of the board, and Board President, and Dr. Garcia, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presentation will be introduced by our Chief Operations Officer, Ms. Wagner-Yanda, Student Nutrition Services.
Good evening, Board President Price, board members, Superintendent Garcia. This evening, we wanted to provide you with some timely information as we kick off the new school year around our student nutrition programs and how they work, how they're funded, how we generate revenue. And we have Ms. Hawkes, Judy Hawkes here this evening. She's been our student nutrition director, a leader in the state, the district, the region for many years. And she's going to share her expertise this evening, and we hope to answer a lot of questions that I think you get from your constituents in the community and parents around our food service programs. I can pull it up, you bet.
All right. President Price, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, and staff and audience, thank you for this opportunity to give you an update on our great department, which includes about 110 employees that are about 90 full-time equivalents.
Excuse me, are we putting this slideshow up?
Yeah, they're working on it.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
So while that's coming up, I'll just start to explain a little bit that all child nutrition programs fall under the umbrella of the United States Department of Agriculture. That's who puts forth our rules and regulations. That's how the funding flows through to us. In the state of New Mexico, breakfast, lunch, and snack are administered by the Public Education Department, Coordinated School Health and Wellness Bureau. The summer food program and the at-risk supper programs are administered through CYFD, so we have the pleasure of working with two different bureaucracies for our programs. Looking at the department revenue, we have two sources of revenue primarily. One is the USDA reimbursements, and that's the biggest part, and then the other part is the fees paid to us by students or adults for their meals. The reimbursements are based on the number of meals served in each category, free, reduced, or paid for the month. Those counts are aggregated and entered into a claim system, and then the flow-through payments are made. So we always are providing the service first, so we have to have a cash balance to pay for expenses until we've served those meals, and then the payment comes. And then in addition to that, we have a small amount of revenue that is from vending meals to Presbyterian Medical Services or United Way for their pre-K programs. So looking at how that breaks out for each meal.
Excuse me a second.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you explain what you mean by vending?
We are the preparer of meals, basically, and those organizations have their contract agreement with CYFD, and we sell them the meals.
Thank you.
So looking at breakfast, for the free category of breakfast meals, our reimbursement is $2.09. No one is paying us any fees for those meals. The reduced price, where the reimbursement is $1.79, and we collect 30 cents from the parent or child. So the total revenue for free and reduced is the same, $2.09. For our paid category, we only are reimbursed 30 cents per meal, and we collect $1.20 in fees, so our overall revenue is much less for the paid meal. And when we go on to the lunch meal, then you'll see that the same situation occurs there, that the reimbursement for the free is $3.31. With the reduced fee and reimbursement, we get the same revenue. But for the paid meal, because our reimbursement is so low, we actually have less revenue, and that's why we've been having to come every year under the paid lunch equity requirement to increase our meal price so that our overall revenue for the paid meal is closer to that we get for the free, so that we're not using the revenue that were provided for free students to subsidize paid meals. So then when we look at the overall department budget, that big blue portion is the USDA. So you can see how important that is, that it's 82% of our budget. And then the fees that the student pays us are only about 10%. And then the CYFD reimbursement, another small sliver, and then the other fees even smaller. So that's a look at our total $6 million in revenue. Then when we look at expenditures, as you would expect, our biggest expenditures are salaries and benefits at 35% salaries, 14% benefits. So, you know, half of our budget goes to salaries. And then, of course, the next big portion is food. And then we also have to pay out of the funds that we generate, because we don't take any operational funds to operate our department. Then we have to pay for our small equipment, replacing spoons and spoodles and serving pieces and pans, and we have to pay for our repairs of our large equipment, our walk-in freezers and refrigerators. and buy our supplies. And so all of that is paid for out of the revenue that we generate. So when we look at standard schools, that means the schools that you typically think of where we collect applications from the students and determine their status, free, reduced, or paid, based on their household size and income, or whether they're homeless, which students that are identified as homeless are immediately classified as free and eligible for free meals. Parents that provide a food stamp or SNAP number, those are categorically eligible immediately as well. So we have the application online on the district's webpage, or we have scannable forms that we provide at each campus. For those standard schools, the meals are counted at the point of service based on their student status using their barcode card, or the students punch their ID number into a pin pad. I just want to point out that students without lunch money or that already owe for meals are still provided the same meal that is being menued and that other students are getting. And we would really encourage parents to prepay for their student meals using My School Bucks on the district's webpage, or they can pay cash or check in the cafeteria. And having those meals prepaid really makes the lunch line go fast, which is a big interest of the principals, of course, to keep everything on schedule. So in addition to our standard schools, which have been declining each year as we're able to put more schools over on the special provisions. So this year we actually have 14 schools that are under special provisions so that everybody at those schools is eligible for free meals without filling out an application. So Provision 2 is based on applications that are collected in the base year, and then the claiming percentages, free, reduced, or paid, that are established that year apply for 3 more years, and then we're eligible to ask for an extension. So the 2 schools that we have under Provision 2 are Capitol High School and Ramirez Thomas. Thank you, Tina, our data person. Then we also have schools under the community eligibility provision, and those are established based on identified students. And the identified students are those that are classified as homeless by our homeless liaison, or they're directly certified by using the SNAP files that PED gives us. So the Department of Human Services and their food stamp rolls provides data to PED. PED makes that information available for us to do student matching. And then those students are immediately free this year, plus if we can get that percentage high enough, then we can place that school on CEP and not have to collect applications in the future. So again, then we have 12 schools that qualify under that, and this year we were able to add 3, Eco, Kearney, and Nina Otero. So we're very happy about that. So when you look at our services, we serve about 3,800 breakfasts per day. We have the Breakfast After the Bell grant at 11 sites. And there was some concern, I know, that came up at a board meeting previously about the grant funding looking like it went down, but that was because our payment through CEP had gone up. So overall, we're looking very good on our reimbursement for our breakfast meals.
Excuse me, Board Member Trujillo.
Thank you, Board President. So the breakfast after the bell, there were a lot of complaints about that during the legislative session, and mostly coming from teachers. Are our teachers not happy with that program? And because I understand, there's some cleanup in the classroom, there's some challenges with that. But the other concern that I have gotten from healthy food advocates is that the food has very high levels of sugar content and is not nearly as healthy as the ones that we can serve in the cafeteria.
Well, I think there are issues and perceptions. So the meal pattern that we serve in the classroom is the same one that we're required to serve in the cafeteria. It's just that since students are going to be helping themselves, we do use a lot of packaged items, or we package items, so that when, you know, each student is getting their own food, they're not handling stuff that other kids are then going to eat. There are, regardless of where it's served, the meal pattern requires a cup of fruit served, so we always give a half cup of juice and a half cup of fruit. Then it requires a serving of bread, or after we have served 1 ounce of bread, we can serve an ounce of meat, egg, or something else that is a protein food. The milk, of course, is always included. The teachers are not always happy about having it in the classroom. When you observe classrooms that have a good routine, it often depends more on the students doing it than really the teacher time. So they set up a station where the food is brought in and set out. Each student goes up and gets their own. There's a place that there's the trash bag. When they're through, you know, they place their things, they're trashed there. It's set out in the hallway. It goes very smoothly. What we've found is when breakfast is not served in the classroom, about 1/3 of the kids eat in the cafeteria compared to the classroom. So again, it's, you know, making that available and assured that every kid does have the opportunity to eat.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And so I guess the last question I have is, are we making sure that there's not a high sugar content?
We absolutely can't have a high sugar content because, and our nutritionists, believe me, there's like a coffee cake I've been trying to get served in the cafeteria, and we can't have it because it's too high in sugar. So that's something that she's always looking at.
Okay. Thank you.
Board Member Carrillo.
I guess I'm not totally clear, and I guess you need to explain to me, why is there breakfast after the bell when there's breakfast before school? I mean, is it because the parents are consistently bringing their kids late? I just don't understand why. And then I can see why different teachers may be concerned about it. When I subbed and when I was at Adelia and everything for that time, and even teachers that I know now, there's often, because at the age range, it's not just little kids, it's, right? So oftentimes the day is started with like a do now. Something as the kids get in their desk to get them started for the day, just do this one little project or whatever. And I just have a hard time imagining them doing their do now while they're having their breakfast and having it all go in a timely, orderly fashion. But even more, I mean, listen, I don't want kids not to eat, okay? That's not what I'm trying to say here. I'm just trying to understand, why are they eating in the classroom and not in the cafeteria?
So historically, this was a grant program that started many, many, many years ago in the state of New Mexico. And at that time, it very clearly was breakfast after the bell. And it was aimed at schools where 85% or more of the students were free or reduced. And so really trying to get that breakfast into the economically disadvantaged students.
May I add to that real quick? Part of that was the advocacy. I see what your question is. And the advocates, particularly like Appleseed and whatnot, and you probably would know that, Representative Trujillo, they're very active in the legislature and they're very adamant. Because I remember when I was secretary, they really pushed hard that I guess they have data that shows that the kids rather go play than eat. And so we know that the nutrition is important for them to learn, and so they're just adamant about the kids, eating in the classroom. They're more likely to eat the breakfast than when it's served in the cafeteria. That's the main reason. And so that it's really coming from the advocates that have pushed for that have then, the funding, rolls down and the legislature has approved it.
And
That was the thinking behind it. And so when you get that money, you have to administer it in the way, with the rules that you are given. We don't have local autonomy to decide if we're going to take those dollars, that we're not going to do, breakfast after the bell.
And
Board Member Creel?
It would just seem that whether or not a child was economically disadvantaged, it's like this is when breakfast is being served. I don't know, I understand. I don't want any kids not to eat. Believe me, not what I'm saying here. Just trying to, if we offer, lunch at the bell, I don't know, we're just like, we're not running a restaurant.
Well, one of the things that happens with the young people is if they want to get out and play and run, and they'll throw away their food.
Yeah, and I see that
That's
at
reality.
lunchtime, too.
Yeah.
Okay, just curious.
Vice President Cashman.
And in defense of this program, when you had breakfast before, if parents don't get their kids there on time, or they are tardy, you still have to feed them. So either you send them down to the cafeteria, or they're the one kid sitting there with a tray. So teachers, probably a lot of teachers don't like it, but you get into a system. So you have kids are eating, they're doing their due now. You've got a system because the eating cannot extend all morning long. You've got time, you say, okay, everybody sit down. And kids are showing up, and you're watching everybody be fed, whereas in the cafeteria, I miss the cafeteria, it's closed. My parents were late getting me to school, I'm hungry. So this is, especially, and it's not at every school, but for the schools that we know those kids need the food, it's working well.
Okay, and just to add to that, PED actually has listened to some of that feedback, and their latest interpretation is that it can be served before the bell as long as there's assurance for those students that you just mentioned that might come late, that they can still be provided a breakfast free of charge. So that's why we do have some schools that are not serving, even though they're on the grant program, they're serving in the cafeteria before the bell. Lunches, we serve about 8,300 per day. We serve the pre-K in class, family style. We started reimbursable vending at Santa Fe High last year, so we have 2 vending machines.
Can you tell me give me an example of what is in the vending machine?
Sure. We have main dish salads, like chef salad. For breakfast, we have yogurt parfaits or a PBJ sandwich, with juice, or a cheese stick and a muffin with milk, cereal and milk. They're in the classroom building. It was an attempt to take the food to the kids because they perceive walking up the hill to the cafeteria sometimes to be too much effort. So we started first with breakfast. We added lunch. I think that this year it's going to be really successful, probably get us 150 to 200 more breakfasts, and same for lunch. So we're really excited about that. Of course, in the construction at Capitol High School, we added 2 more serving lines so that we can spread those, 1,000 kids that are eating lunch, or 1,200, over 6 lines. So that will help us with our service there. The meal pattern for both breakfast and lunch, as I mentioned, is age grade specific. It has minimum and maximums for the food items and the nutrients that we provide. I just want to point out that the meals that we provide to adults must be for program adults, so that means like our cooks or the custodial staff. that is doing a service to the program by putting down the tables, wiping the tables, taking the trash. Any other adults that are provided a meal, our rules require that we're paid the full price of serving that meal to them. And there's still people that just don't get it. They say, but the kids get a free lunch. Why can't the teachers or the hardworking secretary? And so if you can just help us help people understand that. All of those summer programs that you got the update on, we served food service, breakfast and lunch to those, plus we served at the park. So we did about 600 breakfasts per day and 1,200 lunches per day during that. We also do after-school snacks or supper at 16 sites. We do meals for the traveling athletic teams when we're asked. We accommodate students with special dietary needs when there's a medical prescription for that. Some of the other regulations and requirements, there's smart snack guidelines so that any foods sold in the school during the school day have to meet certain nutritional standards. And we're each year training more of our fundraising groups what those standards are. The district wellness policy requirement came out of our regulations, the child nutrition, but of course it's a district effort because it applies to all the schools in the district, and we've been working hand in hand with student wellness, and you'll be seeing that policy. We are excited about some new things. When you look at our menu that is posted on the district webpage, we now have an interactive interface so that if you hover your mouse over a food item, you'll see a nutrition label, a food description telling if it's from a local farmer. It'll highlight allergens. Our nurses can do their carbohydrate counts on it. We have a mobile app for people's devices so that they can see the menu. And we hope that we can go green and not have to print menus or not have to print very many menus. We work continuously with our local farmers to have more local purchases and spent $65,000 last year on that. We've upgraded our software to help us with all of our documentation that's necessary for our reviews. That was just a shot of our web page, but I hope you'll go there and look at it and see how great it is. And that's it. That's a picture of our vending machine. And by the way, the students access it by putting in their student ID number and birthday. And if they're free, they get their food free. If they have money in their account, then it just deducts it from their account. It's a cashless machine.
Vice President Cashman.
I apologize for this question because I just thought of it. Now that we have Milagro, last year all of DeVargas students ate free. Not all of DeVargas, those students will not eat free, not all of them. So we need to have something on the website explaining to parents, I don't know how many they are, but there will be some, why they're not being given a free meal this year.
We started working with Mark on that last spring to get that word out to parents, and we were there at the event last night to get applications, so we're on it.
Secretary Noble.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wonder if you would say a little bit more about the expanding local purchases of food and what, if anything, is limiting that being much bigger.
We just did a new RFP to try to include more local vendors. We do a lot of outreach and education with the local farmers of how do you deal with a school district, how do you bid or respond, what are the requirements, invoice-wise and delivery and that type of thing. The biggest limitation is our growing season doesn't match our school season. So we just sent out 100 and something cases of local peaches, but it's probably a one-time or two-time thing. And then melons, we'll have great melons through maybe October. They come from around Los Lunas, Socorro. And then the apples will start to come in season. We have greens and sprouts year-round. Occasionally, especially during the summer, we can get carrots, zucchini, radishes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, members of the board, the last presentation for the evening, Mr. Romero on truancy prevention end-of-year update. Dr. Lujan, will you be joining him?
Board members, Superintendent, President Price, I'd like to talk to you, take a few minutes, a short period of time to give you the end of the year results with the truancy program that we have ongoing. I think there's some real reasons to celebrate and highlight some of the achievements that Dr. Lujan, his group, and also our teachers and staff across the district have really made some fantastic gains. As you know, Santa Fe has always been challenged with a large amount of truancy, and getting students to go to school is one of the most important things we can do, because it's actually, according to a 2012 report by the University of New Mexico, one of the best indicators of whether or not a child's going to graduate from high school. So it's a powerful indicator. So we wanted to express to you and show you some of our gains over the last few years when you tasked us to begin this truancy task force and what we've done since then. We'll look at a few things, our communications with parents, total absences, how do we compare, not just in New Mexico, but to other areas of the nation, and then we'll talk about chronic rates. So let's just look at the communications itself in this last school year 16 and 17. We had about 946 average letters per week going out, and this is through an A2A program, Attentions to Attendance. The abbreviation is A2A. And what they help us with is sending out correspondence, written correspondence, mailed to the home of parents of students who have missed schools at different trigger points. If you look at the numbers, they're pretty impressive. Over 6,000 first-time truancy letters, over 4,000 second and 2,000 third truancy. And then you talk about excessive truants, you'll see the numbers there on the middle column in the blue. And then on top of that, we've had face-to-face conferences. So if you look at the total number of communications we've had with parents, around 25,000 communications in one school year at the end of the school year. So it's a pretty fantastic amount of communications that we've sent out. Why is that important? We've found the districts who actively communicate with parents do a lot better with attendance. Establishes that relationship with the family. It also goes to the root cause of truancy. Every family is different. There's different reasons for truancy in different families. Some of them behavioral issues, some of them domestic issues with the parents. A number of different reasons, but in Santa Fe, we're very fortunate that we have a large amount of services that we can provide our parents. So the key is to join them up with those services to help them get their students to school. And also, I think the last little paragraph there talks about how these communications demonstrate and communicate to families that truancy is, or attendance is important to Santa Fe Public Schools. If we don't ever talk about it and communicate to the parents, it's not a priority. So these 25,000 communications serve a huge purpose. Just before we look at a few charts, we have to understand what the definitions are when we go to those. This company that we've worked with for 3 years now to take the information that's placed into PowerSchool and help us make sense of it, has these definitions that we'll look at as we look at our charts. Truant, according to the A2A way that they define that, is one that has 3 or more full days of unexcused absences. Now, excessively excused is somebody who's excused, maybe it's several days that the parent writes an excuse for, 7 days or more throughout the school year. And then chronically truant is 10%, which is about almost 18 days of unexcused absences. And chronically absent is 10% again, almost 18 days, whether it's excused or unexcused. And we have to remember that whether it's excused or unexcused, they're not in school learning. So really, does it make a difference? In some ways it does, because there's some obligations we have to the law. But in other ways, they're just plain missing school and missing an education, and their likelihood of graduating and being a productive member of society, I think, decreases. So we have to do our best to get them to come to school. And that starts at an early age. So let's look at the total absence rates over the last few years. And when we first started this in 2014 and 15, that school year, we only included secondary school, mid-schools, and high schools. So anyway, the information, I guess you have to take that into account. So we talked about that truancy rate, students with three unexcused absences was almost 3/4 of our district. In that short amount of time, it looks like we've reduced that to almost only about half of our district. It's not a high bar, 3 days of unexcused absences, and it does happen with different family issues. Sometimes the parents just don't call in to get the absence excused. When we looked at excessive absence rates, we've also reduced that a little bit. I mean, it was hard to say what happened during the first year because it's just a secondary school, but it looks like we're moving the right direction. And then we talk about that chronic truancy, where students are missing 10% or more of the school year with unexcused absences. Look at the trend there. So they're all going the right direction. They're going lower and lower when we look at these absence rates. So I think that's a fantastic gain. And I think a lot of that has to do with our administrators and our staff in the field putting the time and effort into this process. I think this is a good look at a pie chart when you talk about how are our students distributed when it comes to being absent or truant. So we look at the excellent rate, almost 14%, missing less than 1% of the school year. It's 1.7 days or less. That's fantastic. And then if you look at the satisfactory rate, almost half of the students, 45.8%, are basically satisfactory, missing between that 1.7 and 8.4 days. So this area right here is over half of the district, are doing pretty well. Manageable, you can see that it's up to 16.9 days missed. Now, we'll show you how we're working with that. And then the chronic and the severe chronic, you see the numbers there. So the distribution, we do have some work to do, but as we look at these charts moving forward, I think you'll see that we're making some good gains. Any questions? As we look at the pie chart in a different view, and we look at historically what's occurred, what we want to do is we want to make this excellent and this satisfactory grow, and we want to start reducing these manageable and chronics and start moving those students into these categories. And that's exactly what's happened over the past 3 years. We're getting more in the excellent range and the satisfactory range and less in the manageable and chronic range. How do we compare to other districts? Our contractor, Attention to Attendance, has a number of other clients throughout the United States. A good majority of them are on the West Coast, and I didn't count the bubbles, so I don't know how many. I can't answer how many that is, but looks like probably at least 100 other clients we're comparing to. And if you look to our overall truancy rate, it is true we are quite a bit higher than the average. That yellow dot is the average of all the truancy rates. But as we move over to the right and we look at excessive excused absences, we're actually a little bit lower than the rest of the clients are doing, which is a great thing. And if you look at chronic truancy, the 10% or more, we're kind of in the ballpark right there where that green dot is. We're almost right on top of the yellow dot. And then the chronic rate, which is just the overall missing 10%, whether it's excused or unexcused, again, is definitely in the ballpark of where the other clients are in that area. So that's encouraging to me, because sometimes, you know, you see these statistics that talk about New Mexico and how we compare to the rest of the nation. This is a good comparison to a lot of different parts of the country that show that we're making some good gains. Chronic rates by grade. So a chronically absent student, again, is who missed 10% or more. All absences, we don't care. They weren't there for school 18 or more days of the year. And if you look at what we had in the 2014 and 15, the green bar, we were up there quite a ways. Now, this was just secondary schools, of course. That's why you just see the bars to the right, on the right side of the chart. But as we move over into 2015 and 16, it looked like we started making some really significant gains. A lot of it is the work by the staff members at the school, the letters going out, the communications with the parents, the conferences, all that combined to start making a difference. And the dark blue to the far right, you see gains in every category except the 12th grade, where we had a slight raise in absences in that area. And that's where we got to focus some effort, I think. And if you want to, last of all, if you'd like to take a look.
1 second, please.
Yes.
First, Board Member Trujillo, and then Vice President Cashman.
Thank you, Board President. So one of the conversations that Senator Mamie Stewart had in the legislature in the last session was that it was more important that we put resources towards kindergarten first graders, because their truancy rate was higher, but it looks like our truancy rate is higher on the other end. And then the other conversation, Superintendent, maybe you can help with this, is that a day missed by a kindergarten or first grader is more information lost than a day missed by a high school student. Is there any?
You know, I haven't seen the research on that, but I would imagine if you're getting fundamental skills where you are learning how to read and write versus, you know, content that maybe you could go back and read, I could see where maybe you could talk, you know, you can always catch up, but if you missed a specific skill in those early years, probably is more impactful. You know, we're continuing to look at the data. You know, we were not funded this year.
I was going to ask that.
And so we are picking up 2 FTE from, I believe, Title I. Is that, Carl? And then the city of Santa Fe has kicked in for another FTE. And I'm still, you know, trying to see where else maybe we can scrounge to get, you know, more support either from within the district or from one of our community partners. So we haven't given up yet, been able to fund the 4. This effort is now under community engagement with Mr. Gephardt and our licensed social worker, Crystal Ivada. So, you know, we'll still be teaming, you know, with some of the other partners here as we move forward. I noticed it's not in this presentation, and we wanted to keep this brief, just an update of where the numbers were. We really didn't talk about what we're doing, which will come at another time, in terms of, you know, what the truancy coaches do, working with Everyday, is it Everyday Counts or Everyday Matters with the
Yes.
Chamber of Commerce and all the prizes that they do and incentives. We have, as a quarterly meetings, Dr. Lujan, with the juvenile probation and Judge Marlowe. And so we meet with them and we work very closely with them, and they have given us kudos that they feel that our district has been the most responsive in working with the judges, because she says when she meets with her colleagues from around the state, we have been far more responsive in partnering with them. And they take very much a restorative justice perspective on it in working with families that are chronically truant. So we're very excited about continuing the efforts. It is a concern to the high schools in terms of having a halftime, but it appeared, right, Mr. Gephardt or Dr. Lujan, that it seemed like we needed more full-time at the middle school just because of the efforts. I know that there was some question that we have more students at the high school, why would we have full-time at middle school? But there was a rationale behind that, correct?
So, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, so what we looked at was the workload that each truancy truancy coach had last year at the middle school levels and the high school levels. We didn't look so much at the improvements in the actual rates that you see here, but the actual workloads. And what we found was the middle school truancy coaches, their workload was actually heavier than the high school. And so what we did this year, as we're working to fund the fourth position, we decided to split a truancy coach between the two high schools, supported by Crystal Ibata, our social worker, until we could get that fourth position funded. And we're confident we're going to get that position funded. We're working towards that. And we've been working with the high school principals so that they understand where we're at with that as well.
And we're very grateful to the city of Santa Fe for funding that third position. Otherwise, we would only have 2.
Thank you.
Vice President Cashman?
Just one factor we should think about when we're looking at the 12th grade levels. If our kids are visiting colleges, it's a couple of days to each college if they're out of state. So that can quickly rack up if a senior is going to visit 5 colleges, and the parents aren't considering them really truant, but they are out of the classroom for that, and even though they're excused absences, maybe we try to, encourage them to. That's a good thing to do over summer if you can.
Yes, correct. I would like to add, if I may, gains that we have here in the early years of setting standards and expectations with truancy as we move forward, I strongly believe are going to pay dividends here towards the end, because once you establish those habits and expectations, they're going to carry them through. And I think this is where, at the early years, sometimes where poor habits are established. Very difficult to change that as they get into middle school. So, in any case, just the last part of it was to look at it by school and see some of the gains that have been accomplished over the year, where you look at chronic rates at each school site.
Secretary Noble?
Thank you, Madam President.
Yeah.
I just want to compliment you on the presentation and the work, and I really appreciate the data sliced in all these different ways. It gives a good picture, so thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Carrillo?
What are we doing with the community to get their support in making sure that businesses, when they see kids not in school, or maybe they're even hiring kids that are 16 that should be in school, what are we doing in that regard? And then I remember mentioning, I thought it was a really cool idea. You know how you get from the environment department, you get an A or a B or whatever to open your restaurant or you open your business, whatever. And I had this idea that not just restaurants, but businesses that were really supportive of our either truancy programs or even programs to have kids excel and like maintain B averages, whatever it might be, that the business is supporting, that they get an E in their business, so that we know they're walking into a business that supports public schools and public school children. So I don't know, just throwing that out there again, but mostly what are we doing with the chamber and other organizations to make sure they're not thwarting our efforts?
Madam President, Superintendent Garcia, board members, Board Member Carrillo, this is probably the second or third time that we carry your comment forward to the chamber. The chamber, as a matter of fact, are the individuals who if you recall, during a board meeting that they gave those $100 gifts to those kids to recognize their true efforts and perfect attendance. So we've picked at the topic, and we've picked at these ideas, and so they're aware of it, we're aware of it. I mean, how can business organizations, faith-based organizations, and general organizations come to the table and help us raise better attendance? And so I don't have concrete answers as far as, as far as the sticker and the E and those ideas, but, the conversations continue to happen. And we want to just make sure that we not only put stipulations, but we also recognize these students so that we could carry this work forward. We will continue that work, and I'm glad Mr. Geffert's here as he continues this baton, and so those would be something that we bring to the table.
No, that's great. And then also, it just kind of popped in my brain right now, because our minimum wage up here is significantly higher than the rest of the state, which is a really good thing. But also, the downside of it can be that it is an enticement to young people to just get a GED so they can make 1104 an hour or something? 1109? Yeah, so they can make, money. And just throwing this out there, the notion that if a business were, hiring somebody that should be finishing high school, they could say, look, GED is not a diploma. It'll never be a diploma, ever, ever, ever. We'll help you get through high school. And if you get through high school, and we'll then help you maybe intern, we'll help you grow with the company, we'll help you, something to get kids motivated to see a future beyond 1109 an hour. Just thought.
One of the things that my parents did was they turned over all the bills to the house for us to pay. They gave us the money, but so we saw how much it cost to get water, how much it costs to keep the lights on, how much it costs to get groceries in the house. That taught us a lot, because it all gets done for you, and you don't know what that means. There are people 40 years old still living with their parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph.
Please.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. We are on the second reading and approval of the new policy 349, recognition and importance of extracurricular, co-curricular, intramural and athletic team activities. Ms. Christy Wagner-Yondas can stand for questions.
Board Member Creel?
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It passes.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, we're on second reading and approval of new policy 532, student food services and meal charges. And again, our Chief Operations Officer is ready to stand for questions.
Board Member Creel?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It passes. Thank you for that excellent presentation, Ms. Yonda. Board discussion. Board Member Carrillo.
Okay, I put this on here because you all probably read the article. We had a really nice discussion in board review about this that I would almost like to have with all the other board members' input around the article that said they were going to be, it hasn't been approved yet, there's no plans to build, but Plaza La Tieta development off of 599 and Camino La Tierra. And when I woke up and, after I read the funnies and did the crosswords and then read that article, I was like, holy smokes, what are we going to do with these kids? And it's just, and so I really felt that it was important, and in board review we talked about it, and Kate shed a lot of light on process. How does it work that when some developer conceives this idea, I've got 200 acres or whatever over here, I'm going to build this. Where does somebody, right at that point in the county, go to the Santa Fe Public Schools and say, look, this is being considered? Because we're constantly under the 8 ball. We don't have it in our facilities master plan to build another elementary out there. But we see all of this development happening, and some of it affordable homes and apartments. So can someone explain how it works now, how it can be better, just so that we're not always playing catch-up with development?
And I don't know if you wanted an answer right now.
Yeah, that's why it's on board discussion. And
Oh,
I
I
want
don't
to,
know if you meant from us, from staff.
yeah, from you, or I know there's other staff that know a lot about it. I know Ms. Noble knows a lot about it. What can we do to make it better?
First, and then Christie, we can talk about our thoughts about it. But I don't know if board wants to go first, and then we'll respond. Okay.
Board Secretary Noble?
Thank you, Madam President. So we did have a good discussion about this in board review, and it's interesting because it is coming up a lot in terms of how this, how development is done. I was asked the question, I think I mentioned in board review, just hours before that by the group Retake Our Democracy, who is looking to get ahead of development and how approvals happen. And this particular one is still to be considered by the county commission for increased density. I'll try not to use the jargon. And it remains to be seen whether that will be approved by the county commission. But, you know, I've thought a lot about this since our discussion, and I think it's really fundamental to very practical strategic planning that we need to work on as a board, because even in the enrollment numbers that we saw in the dashboard and the presentation there, plus the information that the superintendent shared about higher kindergarten enrollment at Amy Beale, I believe it was, is interesting, and there may be a number of factors going into that. The developable land in the city and county is finite, and you know, the analysis, I think, is done regularly, but then there are other factors such as families sharing homes that may not be as easily predictable as you know, what is the potential zoning or built out of units. And in thinking about this, I guess I thought and had discussed this with the superintendent a little while ago, but wanted to request maybe that we bring back I would say, somewhat more meaty version of the resolution that Vice President Cashman had brought forward before, to really work on the facilities planning. And I think we do need to do this work, and for my part, I would ask that there be more meat on what would be involved there, what if any costs there would be, what factors would be considered in the analysis, and what timeline is realistic in really doing an assessment of how we are going to move forward with our facilities and the number of students, and how we might consider if there were to be any redrawing of district boundaries or zoning or anything like that in the next few years, because I think we probably have a decent understanding if we look hard at what's coming.
Board Member Carrillo?
Well, and to that end, I wonder, like, obviously I wasn't the only one that read this article. I'm sure, you know, other people either with the district did. I'm wondering at what point, I mean, the minute something is on either a county agenda or when an application goes in, is there a point at which we can then meet with the developer? We see that that's happening, because I imagine a lot of it's public information, and we see that that's happening, and we say, okay, you know, Joe developer, we just, like, as a public schools, we'd like a better understanding of what this is going to mean for us down the pike, not 6 months from now, but so that, you know, so it can be part of our planning. Does something like that happen?
Well, I don't think we have a system in place to do that. That doesn't mean we can't build a system to do that. Carl Grindler, as our Chief Governmental Officer, I think can play a role in that. And, we get the clips, we read the clips, we share the clips, as you well know, and we try to keep up with what's going on. So I think it's a matter of a systems issue for us to what triggers an action. So, we see an article like this, maybe we send a letter and say, we'd like to request a meeting to discuss this
But
development.
an article
What's
would
your
be,
thoughts?
an article
Or
would
that
be
we
dependent
hear-
on them writing one.
Well, or that, Mr. Grandler tries to monitor, minutes or what's happening in those meetings. But sometimes, I don't know that we have in place or the capacity to really, attend meetings on a regular basis. So some of this is maybe just us having quarterly meetings with the city manager, or the county manager rather, and, get a sense of where things are going. But we can work on building a system to better capture that. The second piece, I think, is this issue around boundaries and building capacity and demographics, and looking at planning with the staff that Christie has and that we contract with as part of our strategic plan. We should have a field for that we have I think it's all about building systems. I mean, that's what you're talking about, what triggers us to do something? And unless we build a system to have us do that, and that it's systematic and it's a way of life for us, it won't happen. And so, putting this into our attention, I think we can put more intentionality to the work.
Vice President Cashman?
I know in the past on a couple of developments that happened near our neighborhood, the developers are required to have in their application for a permit what impact it is on Santa Fe Public Schools or the school district. And in almost all of those permits, there was no impact on the school system because they didn't come and ask the school system. And so we need to stop. What's happening, at least on the county level, is in the past, they've just said there is no impact. And this was before I was on the board, and I brought it up to the superintendent at that time and said, there sure is an impact. You're bringing all of these kids. There's no school for them to go. And so we need to, maybe write to the county and say, unless you have letterhead from Santa Fe Public Schools, the developers are not, because they're just checking the box, no impact.
Well, I think there's two things
And,
possibly that we could do. One is obviously to send a letter, and staff that are taking the notes down, make sure we capture this. One is writing a letter, and the other is I think that we just go to public forum fairly soon to just say, just so that the commissioners are all aware, because sometimes letters get lost in the bureaucracy, but that we make our presence known and say, these are the real issues that we're dealing with. My board is concerned about this, and I just want to make sure that you're aware that we want to set up regular communication with you, and please be apprised to look at those applications and see that you've received. Perhaps they can do something to ensure that they have checked with us to see what the impact is to our district.
I think that's a very good idea. Did you have follow-up?
And it's really important because I know I did see that letter or that article on 599. Rabbit Road is being built out. That's further along. Rancho Viejo is building tremendously. And so those are things that are happening. The county is building. They're looking for a bigger tax base. And they're the county land is, especially on the south side of the county, they are building a lot right now, and that will have, and a lot of homes, and because they're going to be mixed use, and because the county has, some of them fall within the community college district that specifies how much affordable housing must be put in place, and there are going to be a lot of kids that we need to have. And not just land. They're all willing to give us a piece of land, but that is probably, and maybe at a point we say, instead of land, we want dollars or something.
Board Member Carrillo?
I think the idea of going to the county commission meeting is a great idea. I'm happy to do that if you want. When do they meet? As long as it's not like Monday Night Football night or something. Okay,
It's
no, if it
Tuesday
was, I would go.
afternoons.
Afternoons?
Tuesdays, usually, yeah.
To keep working people from going to their meetings. But I'm still happy to, because Lord knows I'm not a working person, huh, Chrissy? We always joke about what I do to get out of work. Anyway,
Do you
school
want-
stuff. But
do you
there's
want
that,
to
and
be-
then,
Do you want that to be a school board member, or do you want to do that?
I think it should come from one of us. And then, same thing can happen with the city, because Kate was talking about just having them be more partners, and I guess it was infill we were talking about one time. And because, I mean, we're not going to, shut down or tear down any of these schools on the north and east sides, because we do have the enrollment for them. A lot of it's transfers, but it would be so much smarter in the city's planning to have different multifamily units go into areas where we have existing schools and just partner more on infill type growth. And so we could reach out to the city council as well.
Secretary Noble.
Thank you, Madam President. So a couple of things. I think that's a wonderful idea, and it would be so good for the city if we managed to actually do infill on the north and east sides of town. For what it's worth, I actually think that there's sort of an and both solution. I think we should maybe even do letters. I think this is a very good idea, and approve them as a board, and then potentially have a board member deliver them to public forum, because then it's not one board member spouting off. And it is, I mean, the city does it all the time. They might pass a resolution to encourage President Trump not to leave the Paris Accords or something. And as a school board, we can do that, and I think it'll carry more weight to our governmental colleagues at the county commission and city council if we take positions and encourage this sort of thing. I also just want to say, for a lot of these things, I mean, development is in economic cycles, and Secretary Cashman outlines sort of what's going on in building quite well. I would advocate that the staff maybe say, and that there's an approach in terms of, hey, don't check the impact box, or don't let developers get away with checking the no impact to the Santa Fe schools box, and that can be part of our letter even, and maybe even part of staff advocacy. But I wouldn't want to encourage a regular meeting on development things, because frankly, what we're seeing now is pent-up demand from starting in a recession in about 2008. We've had 9 years of nothing being built, and that dam broke last year, and the flood is continuing, and it's going to continue. And so for the schools planning, it's more of if there's a sort of updated strategic plan every 5 years, probably to build in a look at that, some systems and even advocacy to our colleagues. But, we can understand the economic cycles, and I think looking for the pressure points is going to be by far the most effective way to do it, and to understand that the demographics of the city and where children live are going to continue to evolve, and how we can address that on an ongoing basis is probably an important consideration for this board to have.
Madam President, just a point of clarification on that point. So I just want to clarify, so are you suggesting that the board passes a resolution before we write a letter to bring to you? Because I could bring a letter to the next board meeting for your approval, or were you wanting resolution language? I was confused.
So I guess I'm saying two things. I'm saying I would like to see a more meaty version of the work to be done within the district, the resolution that Vice President Cashman brought forward before.
Okay, that resolution, not a resolution about going to the city, but you're talking.
But in addition, I think a letter.
A letter, okay. And so in terms of that resolution.
And I think there's at least
more
than.
Your version of it, I think we're going to need some more discussion about what you're talking about in that, because I know that Ms. Cashman did bring a resolution, and so we would need more direction from the board in terms of what you all collectively would mean by meteor. version.
Yeah, and I went through some of those details just a moment ago. I can do them again if you want.
No, I don't think we need you to do it again.
We got that.
We got it the first time. But
and-
before you go there, we had a resolution and it failed.
Yeah.
Okay. Board Member Creel?
Sorry, I'm not
Oh,
quite
I'm sorry.
finished. And to clarify, so I am asking to sponsor an updated version of that resolution with the additional things, which I can provide again or at another time. And on the letters, I am suggesting actually two versions, one to the City Council and one to the County Commission, addressed in particular with consideration of their processes and perhaps the, if they both require a impact to the Santa Fe Public Schools statement from a developer.
So what I'm looking at, just again to clarify, and checking for understanding, because I probably sound very dense here. So we're talking about two letters, one for the county, one for the city council, that we'll do our best to bring back at the next meeting. The second is to take, I'm just going to call, for lack of a better term, the Cashman resolution, adding language that you shared with us tonight, and then we'll get back with you on that resolution to bring to the board for consideration. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, that's correct, and details on the particular topics.
So I'll work with our chief operations officer. And I know that Carl might have wanted to say something around the economic development. Are you good? Okay, thank you.
Board Member Carrillo?
Didn't think it was going to be this complicated. So if they have to check a box that says impact on the public schools,
That's, a few years ago, I don't know.
but even if there's anything like that now, maybe we can just, it's as simple as asking the county and the city, if the city has a process that's similar, to say, have a box to check, and then the developer is forced to come to us, and we'll write, just a brief letter saying, that this is the impact on public schools, and they'll need that piece as to complete their application. And it can be that simple, just asking the county to change their procedure, tweak it just a little bit to make sure that there is a school impact statement included in their applications. Anyway.
On that point.
Secretary Noble?
I fear that would be met with a lot of objection for the additional burden that it would provide developers to add another bureaucratic, if we were to ask the city and county to require a letter from the district for developers. I don't think it would be well received for the additional burden.
By the developers. Oh, poor developers. So,
Vice President Cashman?
This happened maybe 8 years ago. There is at least at that time, there was a requirement. So we need to first find out what is the current requirements for the county. But they had to certify that they had talked to Santa Fe Public Schools, and Santa Fe Public Schools had said said either impact or no impact. I know that developers are checking that box, no impact, without even approaching the school, because at that time I went to the superintendent and said, how can you, and they said, we've never, ever, ever had anything from a developer. So they're just checking those boxes so the county sees, and the county is a different breed than the city council, and because the county commission is very broad, so they just say the box has been checked. There's not even a signature that, you didn't even have to have a superintendent's signature. It was just no impact. And they had never come. So we need to just figure out what they are requiring the developers and tighten that up before they're just checking no impact.
Board Member Carrillo?
Poor developers. No, I think it's totally reasonable. Yes, it'll be met with objection. It's another thing they have to do. Too bad. You're building a massive development. You're going to make tens of millions of dollars, which you should, because you're building all of this and taking a risk. But it's okay for us to ask of them, and to ask the county, because they're their kids too, the box needs to, if there is a box, whatever it is, there needs to be something from the schools. I think it's completely reasonable for us to first politely ask for it and then in some way demand it because of the way it affects our budgets, it affects bonding, it affects everything.
So we're going to, in order to do our due diligence, I probably won't have this for you in the next board meeting, but we'll work over the next month to bring something comprehensive to you for your consideration.
Secretary Noble?
Just to clarify my position here, I'm perfectly happy asking for existing requirements to be enforced. I would want to think more deeply and consider more deeply if we're asking for something new.
Of course.
Board Member Trujillo?
Thank you, Board President. And I have to agree with Secretary Noble, because I don't think it's knowing whether there's going to be an impact on the schools, or the developer telling us whether they think they're well, or us taking the time to figure out if they're well. What we want to know is that because it's not going to stop the development, or it's not going to allow the development to move forward. It's going to go forward based upon what either the county or the city make a determination that they want to move forward on. But what we need to know is that it's being considered. And so I think it's as simple as having the city or the county just after or while they're considering these, that they notify the school district, and then the board has the information to consider. There's just not anything that a developer is going to get or that we're going to give them that's going to make a difference for the city or the county. It's the bottom line. It's what's going to happen if and when these are approved. Then the school district has to start making some decisions, and that's just a matter of information. I remember sitting through a presentation over at El Camino Royale. Christy was there, and there was a developer there talking about the 300-some units that were going to be across the street, and thinking, for goodness sakes, of course it's going to impact our schools. We can't let this happen. You know, and I was thinking it from a neighborhood perspective too, because of the traffic and all of the things that were going to impact us. And when Christy said to the developer that we don't take a position, either positive or negative, for development in a community, because what we do is when kids are going to come, then we build for them. We do what we have to do to provide. So the district's position is not to take a position on whether there should be infill here or there should be new development there. What it is we want to know if it's going to happen so that we can prepare for it. Because what we want is kiddos in our classrooms, and we'll accommodate for whatever kids come. That was an epiphany for me when Christy helped
Board
me
Member
understand
Carrillo,
that.
and then Vice President.
I'm not saying we have to take a position on development. I'm saying that people need to make
Cashman.
adjustments for development. So that, you know, in a case, if they're, you know, right now, El Camino could be the great example, because across, you know, 599, there's just so much land, right? And if they just keep building it, I mean, yes, we want to know, but then maybe in the same way they've got to give us a park, or they've got to give us, there can be things, there can be trade-offs. I'm not expecting to stop development. I think development is a good thing. I think smart development is a better thing. But it's where we work together, so it's in the best interests of, you know, the developers, their eventual tenants, and the district.
Do you remember when they were building 599 and they said they were going to put a moratorium on housing over there? I wonder what happened to that. Vice President Cashman.
I think we do want to take a position, because if we're not at the table, we're not going to stop the development, but we want something from them. And I use Rancho Viejo as a perfect example. Conditional to build that track was that they had to give the school district 10 acres of land. Now, we didn't have to build on those 10 acres. We could have sold those 10 acres, but that was part. So we do want to take a position and just say, we're going to build because we may not have the land, or as you said, maybe they give us a park or something. But there is a lot of horse trading, and we want to make sure our horse is in the running too, to get something from.
Did you? Okay.
And just, I spoke to the superintendent a little bit about it, but at a future board meeting, could we please revisit what we're doing again for social studies? I know we had a task force, but in light of what's happened down at Charlottesville, I know I'm as guilty as anybody within the district, saying, you know, when I was teaching, I would incorporate social studies into my reading or into, I think it's really now much more important that we follow a social studies curriculum so our kids know that we're teaching them about history in a very deliberate manner, not that everybody is, you know, we have a story about Martin Luther King and a story about Harriet Tubman and a story about the Civil War, but not a very, especially at our elementary schools, that we lay the foundation that these are things that are required as citizens. This is what has happened. And so I think because right now we're seeing a lot of alternate views of history, and history can be good and bad, but we need to understand what has happened in the past so we don't keep on repeating in the future.
Board Member Creel?
So we're moving on for other items of board discussion. I have a couple.
Let's be careful here, all right? It's not on the agenda.
Well, yeah, I know that.
I don't know what you know, but I do want to
No, but they're not,
remind
there
you
are
of
things
that.
to be for the future, yeah.
Oh, that you want on future board discussion?
Well, one, I'd like the board's permission to write a resolution to introduce in the next meeting. I mean, we've taken social stands before, especially on things like immigration, DACA, DAPA, sanctuary district, all the rest. I would like to write a resolution taking a very definitive position on racism, bigotry, and the like, and calling out these groups. And then, the heretofores will be, relative to like recognizing this, when you see this, what you do, and stuff like that. And then also, that should be a resolution. Be really curious to see what they say when we have our meeting in December, this New Mexico School Boards Association, because that includes a lot of, what I call West Texas in the southern part of the state. But I think that we need to try it as a state school board association, take a stand, a definitive stand on hate groups and naming them.
Just as a point of information, there are already 2 states who have introduced legislation that the hate groups in their states be identified and be called terrorist organizations.
That's great. I love that.
Perhaps we might take that to our state legislature.
A resolution, yeah. That's a good idea. I write it. I don't need anyone writing my resolutions. And then, And then the second thing was, and it doesn't have to happen right away. I know we're opening school tomorrow. NAVA EJ, transitions, what are we going to do? Because we kind of said what we're not going to do, and that was close those schools. But now we have to come up with what we're going to do relative to when we do have to, how it's going to be smooth. I mean, so if,
I think it kind of goes back to the resolution that Ms. Noble was talking about, of taking Ms. Cashman's resolution, adding more meat to it. And I think, as we continue to study and work through that, it would have to include a transition piece. So I think it's related to the resolution.
I don't know. But I would just like us to be informed about what the district's plan is to, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know. But to say, okay, we're going to stop taking kinder. I don't think we should do that. But maybe we're going to stop taking kinder, then stop taking this, and because I think these little kids are the.
But to that point, we would, and Ms. Yondo Wagner, we would only do that if, in fact, we're moving in that. I mean, that is the choice where we're going. But there would be no point in doing a transition unless you're thinking about this other. So I think it does tie to the resolution.
It can tie to it. My fear is that, time flies.
But we're not going to just like close school and
No,
say
I know
we're all
that.
there.
I mean, I know that, but I think the board needs to understand what the plan is. And especially as it relates to maybe some kids are going to say, hey, you know what? This is going to be your school in a couple of years. Let's take you over there for a tour.
Okay,
Those kinds of things.
I think we should, if we're going to discuss EJ and NAVA, I think it needs to be
An agenda
on-board
item.
discussion
You're right.
and/or an agenda item, because you know there are going to be a lot of people, we're going to get calls about this
Oh, yeah.
discussion right now.
So that was it, just asking the district to please inform us of what the plan is.
But we weren't, okay, we will.
That's all my item was.
And
there.
we'll do back to the resolution piece, we would have a very considered transition plan if in fact it's an outcome from that resolution or not, because there would be no reason for us to come up with a transition if in fact there's no plan to close those schools.
Then when are you having this resolution, just at the next meeting?
Well, not in the next meeting, but I said within a month we would bring that.
A month's good, but I just, time
I
is
know.
just, it just flies by. And we're a busy district, and you have your staff does excellent work, and they're extremely busy, and I recognize that. The other item is I was going to speak at public forum, and it's relative to just letting, I don't think it needs to be, I think I can just basically say, it was a very frustrating experience registering my son for Santa Fe High, given that he's been in the district since he was a kindergartner, and his number is the same, our information hasn't changed. He was going from one high school to another. I had to re-register him as though he were just moving into New Mexico and starting school all over again. It made me insane that they just couldn't take the records from here and put them over here. And I do want to say, and I know there's a lot of parents, because there were some behind me in line, having to use the computer to enter everything all over again, that were equally as frustrated. There's that, and then, but I think it's really important to say as well that everyone that helped me at the school district level, at Santa Fe High, at ECO, everyone was extremely gracious, helpful, knowledgeable. So I'm very grateful for that. And I don't think it was just because I'm a board member. I think they just were really trying to help solve this problem, but they couldn't, whether it was a software problem, whatever it was, this high school to this high school that's only 200 yards away couldn't move the information. Had to go through it all over again.
Thank you.
Híjole.
Okay, Secretary, no?
I just wanted to follow up on Vice President Cashman's point about the social studies and our current events. And I also had I'd emailed the superintendent an article in the Washington Post which included links to the Southern Poverty Law Center, who I will be giving a substantial amount of money to this year.
I do every year.
And the resources there, and the article was really about what teachers need to be doing immediately this year.
Mhm.
And my hope would be that we actively encourage. I know some teachers appreciate the encouragement or need to be nudged or something like that to have those conversations. And a question for the superintendent, because I know she actually sent out some information to staff, and if you could just briefly tell us what that was.
And I hope I thought I had sent you all a copy of the message to the staff. Did I not?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I did. So I can resend that, but basically just, restating that we're a welcoming district. We celebrate diversity. We want all of our children to feel safe and secure. Hatred doesn't have a place in our school. Fear, all of that sort of thing. We also received resources to send out to the school that I sent. I received what I received from you all, and we'll be forwarding that information. So we will make it a point to ensure, I don't even know if you're looking at me, do we put something on the website? I can't remember, Mr. Gephardt, if we did or not. But I know that we will do our best to continue to communicate that information as well. And also don't forget the New Mexico Center on Law and Poverty that also does a lot of work here in New Mexico.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, we also included it on our Employee Information Center, so we're getting the resources out that way, and we've shared it with Linda Sink as well.
Right. So
Did you send out information about the Southern Poverty Law Center?
No, we haven't.
I don't think
I wish you would check with them, because they have a curriculum that could start tomorrow.
So we'll
That's
forward that.
available.
I'll forward that to you so we can get it out to our employees.
Perfect.
Thank you.
They have a curriculum start tomorrow. Board Member Creel? Let me just say real quickly about the Southern Poverty Law Center. They also have incredible AV materials that they will send free to the school library, one per school. They are an incredible site, and they're the ones who've been tracking these hate groups for years, and there's been a sudden uptick. Board Member Creel.
Didn't that sudden uptick happen like November 9th?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, it started during the campaign.
Well, yeah, there you go. Somebody told me something really funny, and I can't remember it. And I said, oh, make our country great. Oh, yeah, it was, you want to make our country great again? Let's go back to November 7th. Anyway, do we still do the newspapers and education program that we used to have here?
I don't know. She's saying we do, but I can check to see how.
Just curious, because for current events, I mean, that's,
Newspapers and education?
yeah.
There are, the New Mexican ran some ads reaching out to teachers again, saying if you're interested, please let us know. So that's a wonderful program.
Is it a cost to us, or?
No, people donate
To
monies
them, and then they donate the
don't-
stuff.
Right, and then.
It's a great
so
program.
each school- Yeah, it is a wonderful program.
Any other topics of discussion? All right, let's move on to advanced planning. Does anyone have anything that they feel needs to be changed or added to advanced planning? Then it is with great dismay that I end this meeting.
Thank you.